Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. We will give a couple of minutes so that more people can join. In the meantime, can you all confirm that if you can see my screen? If any one of you can confirm? Perfect, thank you. I believe we shall start now. It's 6:02. So thanks everyone for joining. Welcome to this series of webinars. It's a series of 3 webinars that we have planned to conduct on the implementation of ISO IEC 42001, which is also called AIMS, Artificial Intelligence Management System. And the reason we planned is as a series because we do not want you to be overloaded with a lot of information in one webinar. And at the same time, once we go through with the basic and the fundamentals, so that at least you can understand and digest, and then we will have another webinar, and then so that it's kind of journey in as part of the 3 series webinar, and that's how we have planned. So before we go into the detail, a very quick introduction. Myself, Wasim Malik. I'm based out of Sydney, Australia, and I'm the founder and the CEO of Risk Professionals. So very quickly, I hand over to Zohair and then Ranson if they can briefly introduce themselves.
Hey guys, I'm Zahair, currently working as an AI software engineer here at AI Consulting Group. My sort of part in this webinar is I'll just be running you guys through the basic technical understanding of AI so you guys know what it exactly is that we're governing.
Thanks. My name is Ram. So I'm a AI data and AI partner from AI Consulting Group. I'm here to share with you some of the practical AI use cases that have really created value for businesses, and I'll also share with you the AI, what AI has, how AI has impacted my career. So, thank you.
Thanks, thanks, Ryan. And this is what exactly what we thought that before we jump into the implementation of ISO, but then let's get some fundamental understanding of the AI and then also some use cases because that will help you understanding what the AIMS, how we can implement, how we can improve the governance. Why do we need AIMS? What are the risks in as part of this artificial intelligence systems or the application that we are using? All right, so today's agenda is a very simple agenda. As we said that we'll go through the fundamentals, so we will spend 5 minutes into that one and then some use cases, most probably 10 minutes. And then most of the time we'll be spending on the implementation of ISO IEC 42001. Again, the slides, and then what I will try to do my best is to keep it simple because I believe we have a lot of professionals in the webinar now. Those are experienced, they are seasoned professionals. They might have implemented other management system. That could be ISO 27001 for information security or ISO 22301 business continuity or maybe any other standard. But there could be some beginners that have not implemented any management system in the past. So we'll take this from the very start so that everyone can be with us in this journey. What we also, since we want you to implement and then we want you to guide how to implement, then we are offering some templates to start with. And these are the core templates I would say that you need. Statement of applicability. Again, I will be explaining what that one is. And then again, a risk register template. And then also if you start on this project, and then it's kind of template for implementation plan where you can find all the work breakdown structure. So that will definitely help you and in understanding and then implementing your AIMS. Now, since we have only limited time, so may I request you to send all your questions in the chat, or send the questions to info@riskprofs.com and we'll get back to you. If we get time at the end of the webinar, then definitely we are more than happy to answer your queries, but then we don't want to miss your questions. So please do share your questions in the chat or send in to our email address. So now, without further delay, I'll hand over to Zohair to share with us some of those basic terminologies or the fundamentals. Over to you, Zohair.
Thank you for that. In order to understand what it is that you guys actually want to govern or end up having to govern, I think it's important to have a baseline understanding of what are we talking about when we say artificial intelligence. Because it's a very broad term, and traditionally it covers a lot of different topics as well. So today in this day and age, when we say AI, we typically mean something like a ChatGPT, which is an LLM in the background. And we'll sort of discuss more about what an LLM is exactly. But before that, there's also other traditional types of AI as well. So there's machine learning. And now an LLM is basically a derivative of machine learning or a sort of sub-branch of machine learning, similar to deep learning as well. So what is machine learning? It's sort of just a predictive technology. It's a lot of mathematical concepts that you use to eventually create a prediction. And that's the baseline understanding of how machine learning works. The very earliest forms of AI were just simply rule-based systems. We also call them expert systems, but they're very rudimentary at best. We also have some things called natural language processing, which are typically used for something like a sentiment analysis or, generating some sort of language. A very archaic version of an LLM in a sense. Although it still has some very powerful implications, it's sort of been not as widely researched as of today. And then of course we have computer vision, and that computer vision is, as the name applies, allowing or sort of creating a way for the computer to see, in very layman's terms. But a lot of things go into computer vision, but we're basically identifying sort of images within an image, to be able to allow the computer to see. If we can go to the next slide, please. Yeah. So let's talk about machine learning, because in this day and age, that's where everything comes from. So the most basic form of a machine learning model is the linear regression model. And that's just a fancy way of just saying that we're trying to find a line that fits the data points best, as you can see in this graph below. Now, all it is we have a set of data points and we're just finding the best fitting line. And we sort of use that to predict a value based off of two different variables. A very common example that, maybe university students have sort of tested is housing price predictions, where one variable might be the land size and we use that to predict the price. And that's still a type of AI. It's a prediction-based model. So can we go to the next slide, please? So then that leads us to today. What is an LLM? So an LLM is essentially a very, very advanced form of deep learning models. And deep learning is also just a form of machine learning as well. Now, large language models are, as the name implies, trained by a large amount of text-based data. When we're talking about LLMs, we usually refer to these two common terminologies, which you might have also seen come up in a few places here and there, and those are tokens and parameters. The reason why tokens is an interesting and important concept to know about is that's the basis of how an LLM works. If you refer to the image to the right here, you can see that we've color blocked out sections of characters here. And each section of characters is a token, right? So if you see in the first line, we've got around, what's that, around 5 to 6 tokens right there. And when you boil it down to the very, very basics, an LLM just predicts the very next token in a sentence. That's the entire premise of the LLM. So all the LLM does is it predicts the most likely next token based on the current present token. And so that's what a token is. Another very common terminology you might hear are referring to parameters. When we talk about parameters, all this is referring to is essentially the size of the model. In this day and age, the size of the models have gotten very, very large. We're talking about trillions of parameters. And when we refer to parameters, the larger a model, the better its results are going to be. So that leads us into our next topic, which is that modern LLMs now have the ability to make tool calls. The reason this is important is because this is what you might have heard about AI agents, but this is the essential sort of backbone of how agents work, right? The ability to call tools, which just boils down to being able to execute a section of code. If I had to give an example, we'd say something like being able to execute a Google search is a simple example of a tool call. And so this is where the basis of AI agents come from. Can we go to the next slide, please?
But Zohair, before we proceed to the next
Yeah.
one, can you give like a simple example of an LLM that we use every day?
Of course. Sorry for skipping that, but an LLM is something like your ChatGPT or your Claude or your Geminis, right? The LLM is just the essential model that's running in the background that's powering all of these chat-based interfaces.
Thank you.
Yeah. So in the current AI landscape, we have these agents or we have these AI embedded workflows, right? However, they're very unreliable in nature. So that's why governance is especially needed. We need some sort of audit trails, and we need governance to keep these models or the usage of these models under control. And so by setting up these governance frameworks, we ensure transparency, accountability, and of course, ethical alignment, which are going to be very important moving forward. Okay, so those were LLM usage scenarios. However, they're not all the usage scenarios, of course. We have some computer vision scenarios. I believe Rand is going to run over some of these computer vision scenarios as well. And of course, we have some recommendation engines, which is another type of usage scenario. That would be something like your Google search engines. They're also powered by AI, which is called recommendation engines. Or when you're shopping, it might suggest you a similar item. That's also a recommendation engine. And so in terms of governance, your governance will usually lie within these sections of training the model or implementing the model. So they're broken into these particular sort of sections, right? We've got data collection, we've got modeling and training the data, or training the model based off of the data. And then, of course, when you've trained and you've created the model, you need evaluations, you need validations, and then, of course, you deploy that model. And then eventually you might come to the point where you have to retire or decommission this model. And then, of course, you just go back around to the same loop. And that's essentially the AI life cycle. Can we go to the next slide, please? All right. Well, that's all from me. I'm going to hand it over to Ran.
Thank you.
Thanks, Zohair. Over to you, Ram.
Oh, thank you, Watson. Yeah, so I'm gonna share follow on what Zaha have said. I'm gonna share with you some of the practical use cases in this real business world. But before that, I just want to share with you one story about myself because I mentioned to you I'm a data and AI partner, and everyone have heard about AI has came out and it's gonna take your job. Unfortunately, I was one of them. So a few years ago, I was working as I was leading a business analysis team in a very large consulting firm. And we did business analysis for Fortune 500 companies. Life was really good until ChatGPT came out. It was so good at summarizing business requirements, summarizing meeting notes, converting business requirements into technology requirements. So we all started using AI, and it was so good. And we quickly realized that business analyst is probably no longer needed. And that's what happened. Soon I lost my job. So from that moment, it taught me an important lesson. So for business leaders, business owners, there's a choice. Either you jump into AI, be a champion to adopt AI into your business, your organization, and you can create a strong legacy, or you don't do anything, and then you risk to become irrelevant, for behind with your leadership. That's why I started helping, business leaders and business owners to find out where AI can create real value for them and help them to build some of those AI solutions. So the first use case I'm going to share with you is for a restaurant group. So imagine, we all know that for the restaurant in the busy hours, the staff will be busy serving their customers, and they don't have time to answer the phone because they really want to provide a good experience for customers already on site. But that means if they miss out a phone call, they're missing out potential businesses. They're missing out on those bookings. So that's a dilemma a lot of restaurants were facing. And we started implementing voice AI for these restaurants, which means 24 hours every single day, AI is able to answer the phone call for them, whether it's about I lost my hat, or finding out about the parking situation, or actually making a booking. So all of those questions can actually be handled by AI using the voice AI agent that we have built for them. And the impact has been quite impactful, I'd say. So move on to the next slide. You can see in that particular example, so the restaurants, they were able to capture 236K revenue per month from that AI booking. So that's the revenue that they would have lost without the AI answer the phone and capture that revenue for them. This restaurant quickly rolled it out to other sister restaurant in the same hotel group. And now we have been rolling out these voice AI agent to hotel groups, hospitality groups across the world. So that is a real example where AI is actually be embedded into your business and help you to capture additional revenue, it's almost like fixing the leaking boat. Before you try to grow your business, you really want to capture those missing revenues that you're experiencing using AI. So that's an example of voice AI. The next use case I'm going to share with you is actually not using the ChatGPT or generative AI type of AI, but it's a more traditional one that Zahai have touched on just now. It's about computer vision. So imagine that in say a mining operation or in a construction site, people will need to put on their protective gear like helmet, goggles on. And if they don't do that, the consequence can be really, really severe. There's no business in Australia want to get into any of those safety incidents, especially if it's gonna involve injury or casualties, and that's an extreme risk that no company, no operation want to get into. But before, they have to rely on some human to enforce that process. They have human to manually check if someone's got those compliance on, but they can't do that all the time. They have to do an audit. So there are times that they're not around, and they can't capture those incidents. But with a computer vision in place, it's able to detect images or videos on site 24 hours, 7 days a week. That means you have the AI to always checking if someone got their protection gear on. And that means it can detect 100% of the time of any non-compliance. And move on to the next page. Here are some of the value that we're seeing. So not only it's able to, as soon as it detects someone does not have that protection gear on, then it can send an alert and notify the person or the relevant team. So they are detecting 100% of any non-compliance and reducing the incidence of non-compliance. But also, what we also find out is that having this AI in place is driving a positive behavior across the site. So previously, when you rely on a human to check it's inconsistent, sometimes things just fall through the crack. But now if people know that 24 hours every single day, there's AI there to help you enforce that, it actually drive people a positive behavior. People naturally, they actually are more compliant. And lastly, it also helped to give you a lot of good data around, so where is the high risk groups that you can actually focus on and provide more training to help drive a better behavior. So that particular computer vision case has really not only helped to detect non-compliance in construction site, but also help to drive a positive behavior and help them to provide like dedicated training to improve their risk and reduce their risk incidents across the board. So that's a high value use case. Just checking on time. So how are we going with the time, Watson? Do we have time?
Yeah, maybe you can go ahead with this case as well. But then
Yeah, sure.
since we'll be sharing the slides with everyone, so they will definitely get all these use cases. But then
Yeah,
I think this is a
sure.
good one, so you might as well.
Yeah, so let's quickly cover the next one because so the first one, the third one I'm gonna cover off is actually quite common across all businesses, which is in the recruitment space. Now, we all know that generative AI and AI is pretty good at processing text and also understanding context these days. What we found is that a lot of HR teams, they now spend a huge amount of time reading through hundreds of CVs in order to shortlist candidates. And we can actually automate that workflow using Gen AI. Gen AI is able to automatically, ingest hundreds of CVs and rank them based on a particular algorithm, rank them based on your particular selection criteria. And that is able to, actually save your HR team from that tedious job of reading through all the CVs, but also is able to apply consistently a selection criteria. While human, you may get tired after reading the first 5 CVs, you may be, getting tired and not able to consistently apply the same level of criteria. But AI never get tired, and it can actually, ingest a large amount of CVs and process them, rank them, select them based on a consistent criteria. And we've also built solutions that automatically call the potential candidate, helped ask them screening questions and book them initial interview. So basically AI can actually replace entire workflow and give you a huge amount of automation, help you to deliver a lot of efficiency benefits in that HR space. So those are the 3 high value use cases that we have seen. Of course, this is out of, let's say, 100 plus AI solutions that we've been building in the last 6 years. We always, if you want to learn more, feel free to reach out to me afterward. But for now, I'll hand it over to you, Watson.
Thanks, Ran. That was really good. So now let's get on to the implementation of ISO 42001. All right. Now, first of all, why do we need ISO 42001? As all of you might have witnessed that the rapid evolution or the adoption of AI technologies everywhere in your organization, be it a Microsoft Copilot or browser-based applications and all this. So they are going in a faster pace than we have the governance in place. So there is a lot of risk in the adoption of AI technology. So what we need to have a proper framework and the governance around it. And ISO 42001 is one of those is the only ISO standard, and then is one of those governance framework that we can adopt, because that's going to help us in gaining our stakeholders' trust. And then, of course, it follows the structure approach, and it follows the same approach like any other ISO standard, which is like a PDCA, which is plan, do, check, and act. And just very briefly, now a few other standards those are related to 42001. It's good to mention those. Now, if you are familiar with ISO 22301, which is on business continuity, and we do the business impact analysis. So it's not same, but it's similar now. As part of 42001, what we need to do is we need to conduct AI system impact analysis. So it's definitely covered in 42001, but then if you need a detailed guidance on that one, then that is ISO 42005. Now, ISO 23894, that is on the risk management related to AI. So that's another standard that you can refer to. And then 22984 is on all the terminologies that is used for AI. Now, just to mention, ISO 22984 is freely available for download. If you go and do a Google search from the ISO website, you can download this standard for free. 42006 is not really for the individuals, but basically this is for the certification body. This is the guidance for them, how they're going to audit the cert organizations. So yeah, it's good to know these standards. And 42001 definitely is the standard that we need to comply and then gain certification. But these are also complementary standards. All right, let's get on to the structure of ISO 42001. So similar to any other ISO standard, if you are familiar, or even if you are not familiar, so let me explain this, that this follows the same structure as far as the clauses are concerned. So basically, scope, references, and the definitions, and then what we have is, again, please don't go with the numbering of this, is just the serial number, but then as a clause number. So like what we have context of the organization, which is clause 4. And what we do in this one is basically you need to understand the organization, what the context, and you need to define the scope, the internal and the external factors contributing. Again, we will go into all the details of these clauses in our second webinar, but then my intent or my objective for this webinar is just to go through at a high level what exactly is part of the standard and what we need to do as part of the implementation. Now, clause 5 is the leadership, basically the commitment about the leadership. We develop the policy, the roles, and the responsibilities. And as I mentioned earlier, this is the same as any other standard, because for any standard that you need to implement, you need to define the context. You need to have the leadership commitment, because without a leadership commitment, you cannot have an effective management system. And then again, clause 6 is the planning. As part of this planning, you do your risk assessment, your objective settings, and all this. But then the one thing that I would mention, that here you define the criteria for risk assessment and all this, but at the same time, you do risk assessment of any risk that is related to your management system. But in clause 8 also, you do the risk. Those are AI risks. So there's a bit of a difference in 6 and 8. Clause 7 is your resources, your competence, your awareness and communication. So the clause 7 addresses all those areas. And then again, clause 9 and clause 10 is again, clause 9 is your performance evaluation, your KPIs, your, all the, and also the internal audit. So again, internal, these are all, and then finally the improvement, because as part of your internal audit, you might end up having some non-conformities. You need to implement corrective actions and all this. So again, these all clauses follow the same PDCA cycle. Now, similar to any other standard, as I said, that follow the same structure. So all these standards, they have these clauses, and these management clauses are mandatory. So any clause or a subclause, you have to comply as a must. If you don't comply to any of those clauses, this means you cannot achieve certification. And again, we will go through in detail now that if you comply to these clauses in one area, may not comply to another areas, then what would be the severity of the non-conformance. But again, at this stage, just to mention this, that these are the clauses, these are the mandatory clauses, and then you have to comply. And this is same structure in all the standards. Now, the difference is, now not all the ISO standards have annexes. Now, many of you might be familiar with ISO 27001, which is on information security. So ISO 27001 does have Annex A, and likewise, ISO 42001 also has Annex A. Annex A has technical controls, and the difference between the clause and the control, as I said, clauses are mandatory for you to implement and comply, but Annex A controls, it depends that if it is applicable or not for your organization. Again, I will go through in detail how that you can define the applicability. If you remember in the beginning, I mentioned that we will be sharing a statement of applicability. So that actually applies to Annex A. And then again, I will go through in detail in today's webinar. How is that related? The good thing in ISO 42001 that it has Annex B as well, which is the detailed guidance on the implementation of Annex A controls. Previously, like in case of ISO 27001, there was no Annex B. Rather, they have a separate standard, ISO 27002 on the guidelines. So you had to buy a separate standard for those guidance. So in this one, they have provided Annex B as well. Now, this standard also have Annex C, which has AI-related organizational objectives and risk resources. Because it's a new standard, so the intent was there to provide you as much guidance as you can, so that it's easy for you to implement. Now, the final one is the use of AI management system across domains of the sectors, and that is where I have requested Ran to share with us some use cases, but at the same time, you can refer to Annex D as well, that what could be the usage of these AI. Now, in ISO 27001, there are 90 plus controls. In this 42001, we have 38 controls. I hope I'm not going very fast, but I wanted to be on a steady pace, but at the same time want to share as much information as I can. So this is the structure of Annex A. So Annex A2 is the policies related to AI, and then internal organization, resources for AI systems, and assessing impact of AI system. This is what I mentioned, that system impact analysis, and then AI system lifecycle, and then data for AI systems, and information for interested parties. Finally, the use of AI systems. And then very critical one is the third party and the customer relationships. Again, I'm just sharing the structure in this today's webinar, but then we will go through all these clauses and the controls in detail in our next webinars. Now, one thing that I've noticed, and then the people do get confused that, for example, policy, if you see policy is also covered in the clauses, and then again covered in the Annex A as well. So the main difference there is now, like in clauses, they define what and why, because that's at the management level. But in the controls, that how you're going to do it, be a bit more operational. So don't get confused, please, once you see that policy is there as well and policy. And once you go, let's say you are being audited, or if you will go do an audit, and then pretty much the evidences would be the same, because eventually you will see that how management, they have mandated to have a policy in place. That could be in their roles and the responsibility, that could be in the terms of reference, but at the same time, you might want to see the policy as well. So that's how these clauses and the controls are designed in as part of the standard. Now, again, as I mentioned, I just wanted to add this slide so that you know that the structure, be it artificial intelligence management system or information security management system or business continuity management system or any other standard, they follow the same structure. They all have clause 4, they all have clause 5, 6, 7. So they all follow the same structure. Now, as I mentioned, I might have some attendees here now. They are already experienced in the implementation of management system, or they already have implemented and they already have one management system certified. For example, if I may take an example of ISO 27001, and then now you are planning to implement ISO 42001. So rather than creating two separate management systems, because then you have to maintain two separate management systems, then you can create an integrated management system, which we also call IMS. So that's how you integrate the management. And why you integrate, and then why it makes sense, because of this structure. Because you have to define a context for each management system. Your leadership commitment should be there for each standard or each management system. So that's why it's a natural optimization opportunity. So and then same resources. Now, let's say that you are being audited from one management system, and auditors will come and audit you for one management system. And then after 2 or 3 months, they will come and audit you for another management system. So you will be engaged in audits for most of the time. So, but if you integrate these management systems, then you will be audited once. So that's how it's an opportunity for you to optimize your cost and your resources if you integrate those management systems. So integrated management system is if you want to integrate more than one management system. It could be two, it could be three, or it could be more. So that's how you can. And so rather creating, let's say, ISMS, which is Information Security Management System Manual, and then Artificial Intelligence Management System Manual, you create an integrated management system manual. And that's where you integrate the two or more than one management system. So these are, again, those are the options, and that's how you can, like, I'll give you an example, like for the policy, let's say if you already have information security management system in place, and then you have an acceptable use policy. But now with the AI adoption, now you want to embed that one into the same policy, rather creating another acceptable use policy for AI. The other thing you must have heard about BYOD, bring your own device. This is very common policy that you develop for business, for information security. But now you might have heard about BYOAI, bring your own AI. So now rather creating a separate policy for this one, you basically update your policy and then combine BYOD and BYOAI within the same policy. So that's how you need to see that what current documentation that you already have in place, and then utilize the same rather than creating another set of document, because eventually you can create, but then at the same time, it's not only a matter of creating those policies or the documents or the collaterals, but it's a matter of continuously monitoring and maintaining those documents and keeping them up to date. So same thing as I mentioned about the audit as well, incident management, or all these processes that you can combine, and then you can address those in one set of document. The other thing in case of AIMS, that it depends what kind of a role of your organization is. Are you just a user of an AI system? Are you a provider of AI system? Or if you are a developer of AI system? So, and how that gonna impact? Because again, I will explain that one about the system, about the system, about the use of acceptable, sorry, statement of applicability. That's where it makes the difference, because as I said, and again, I'll repeat, all the management clauses are mandatory, you have to implement, but then Annex A controls, those that's where you can decide whether those controls are applicable or not. Let me explain it later now, once I'm gonna say now. So what is SOA? So SOA is statement of applicability. So let me define. So you have Annex A control. As I said, there are 38 controls as part of ISO 42001. So not all 38 controls may be applicable for your organization. So what you need to do is now that you have to go through one by one all those controls, and then if you are a user, then there might be some controls those are not applicable. Then you need to mention within your statement of applicability that this control is not applicable. Similarly, if you are a developer, there might be, it could be the case that all the controls are applicable. But it's not like that you can decide and then you will be audited based on your decision whether those controls are applicable or not. You have to provide justification why those controls are applicable, and especially why those controls are not applicable. So the auditor will, once they will come and do an audit your management system for you to get the certification, you have to justify why it is not applicable. So auditor need to be convinced, so you need to properly provide a justification being applicable or not applicable. So that's the statement of applicability. Now, let me see if I can quickly, because All right. Can you all see my screen in Excel now? Can you see the Excel? Or is
No,
the
we can't
same?
see that. No.
You can't see the, let me reshare it then. All right. Can you see the Excel now? All right. So this is the sample. This is the statement of applicability, and then again, we will be sharing the statement of applicability with you all. So if you see this one, all these Annex A controls are listed here, and then you need to decide whether these are applicable or not, and then if those are applicable, whether these are implemented or not. And then you have to provide the justification why these are applicable and why these are not applicable. And then, of course, for your own sake, why it was it regulatory requirement or contractual or business or risk? Who is responsible? What is your target date? So all these things that you need to provide here. But here, also what you need to see that whether you are a developer organization, a provider, or a user. So these are the things that you know. And then this is just like as a sample that we have provided here, that this is again, as I mentioned, this is the sample. These could be applicable, these could be not applicable, could be partially applicable. So that's how you need to decide that your statement of applicability, and you need to defend this statement of applicability when you will be audited. And then again, a simple dashboard for you to monitor that what's the status of your SOA, how many controls are applicable, how many are not applicable, how many you have implemented. So again, that's one of those things that you have to do in the beginning of your journey for the implementation of AIMS or even ISO 27001. So let me now share my screen again. All right. I believe you can see my slides now. All right, okay. So I have explained about the statement of applicability. So I already have shared. Now, one of the main things all these ISO standards are risk-based standards. And so we need to identify risk. And some of those risks are related to what we need to ensure that if our AI system is not biased, is all the algorithms are fair. So the output that we get, and the example that, for example, Ren has given about the HR thing. So about being biased and being fair, that is very critical. And then we need to identify that risk. And not only this one, again, we'll go into detail now. Let's say that you have deployed a system and that is basically non-biased and it is fair. But it's not only a matter of while you're deploying the system, but at the same time, you need to continuously monitor, because there could be a drift in the model that you have deployed, and over a period of time with additional data and all this, it might drift from the original output. So these are kind of risks that we not only need to mitigate in the beginning of the implementation of the deployment, but at the same time, it's an ongoing monitoring as well. Similarly, the transparency and explainability, you need to be able to be transparent and explain what algorithms, what are those, how you are arriving at the output. And privacy and security definitely is model drifting, as I mentioned just now. And then, of course, the compliance and the governance structure. Now, same thing. Now I will be sharing. Let me see if I can. I will share with you the risk register as well, so that you can benefit. So very quickly, let me share my screen. All right, can you see my risk register? So again, we will be sharing this risk register as well, some sample risk, but then of course there are a lot more risk, and I will be sharing maybe a few more links as well, because that's where there is an atlas available for the AI risk. And then there you can see all type of risks. So again, based on, let's say this is the likelihood and this is the impact, and that's how you're going to get the risk rating. And that's how, and then you can monitor your risk. And this is just like kind of sample risk framework that we have provided. Again, this is based on 5 by 5, like the probability is based on 5 ratings, and the impact is as well, and then the severity. It depends that if you are following a 5 by 5 or 3 by 3 matrix, then that's how you can customize this tool as well. But then again, it's a good start for you to do the risk assessment. All right, now let me go back to my presentation. All right. So yes, so that's kind of your journey. If I would define at a high level, you need to identify your use case. It could be more than one use case that is in the scope of your certification. So again, you need to first, as I said, in the context of your organization, you need to define your scope, because you will be audited based on your scope. So if there are one use cases or if there are multiple use cases, then you need to define, or you can have one use cases, implement it successfully, get certification. And again, I have in our third webinar, I have requested, and very kind of them, they have accepted our invitation, and the certification body GCC, which is the global certification body, and they will come and they will explain the certification process. So what I was going to say, that you can start with your one use case, and then in your surveillance audit, again, we'll share with you this process, then you can add more and more cases. So you can keep extending your scope. And then you have to do your risk assessment. You have to do your control selection as part of your SOA. Yeah, there will be a lot of policies and the procedure that you need to develop. And then finally, you have to conduct internal audit. These are all, this is internal audit is one of those mandatory requirements for you to go for the certification. And then certification audit is a separate thing, which is an external audit. Okay, now before that, now there is another one. Let me share my screen again. So this is another thing that we'll be sharing with you. Now, whether you are a consultant or you are implementing for your own organization, can you see the Excel now, the project plan that I've shared? All right, perfect. Now, again, this is, again, you can modify, you can change this one. Now here, this is based on the 5 months. I mean, again, sometimes the clients, they are in a rush. They want to implement in 3 months. They want to implement sooner. Some, they say no, whatever it takes, because, and I always tell them that you can implement the system maybe rather in 3 months or 4 months, but it may not be effective because it takes time. You can develop those policies and procedures, you can do the SOA, you can do risk assessment, but then properly implementing it, ensuring that your employees are trained and conduct awarenesses, then it takes time. So you need more time to implement, but then again, you can vary depending on this one. So here, the way I have structured, let's say you want to start in November, or if you want to start in December, and then that's how if your whole dates will be changed as well. So that's how you can have your very nice project plan in place. And then you can, of course, manipulate the days. Now, if you see the red dot here, now, again, we'll be explaining the process later about the certification, but then certification audit has 2 stages, stage 1 and stage 2. And normally you keep the gap in the 2 stages, and that's where you can increase, let's say you want to keep 44 days or whatever days, and that's how the whole plan will be changed. So again, it's very nice and easy project plan that you can use for your implementation. So let me go back to my presentation. So yeah, so this is how you can implement, and then we have now explained you the structure of the standard that has clauses, and basically what you need to implement is clause 4 to 10. Those are mandatory clauses, and then there are Annex A controls, a total of 38 controls that you need to implement. And yes, and this statement of applicability I have shared with you, risk assessment we will share with you as well, and then yeah. So very briefly now about the risk professionals. So in case if you need our assistance for conducting any gap assessment or for implementation, internal audit, or once you have implemented and achieved your certification and then you don't have resources for the management or the maintenance of your certification, that's where we can also help. Now, at the same time, we are a global partner and a platinum partner for PECD that provide all audit trainings for the lead auditor, lead implementer. And then now recently they have introduced AI risk management training as well. And then, as I mentioned, that yes, certification that what we also support our clients now that rather than dealing with certification bodies because they are not familiar with the whole process, we liaise with the certification bodies and then make it easy for you like a kind of one-stop shop. So basically, we provide the whole turnkey solution. And then just providing a QR code so that if you would like to scan, of course, we will be sharing our slides as well. Now, over to you, Ren, and thanks for your complimentary services that you're offering to our attendees. So I would request you to go through what you are offering.
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Wassim. Yeah. So like I mentioned earlier, what AI Consulting Group does is we focus on helping business leaders and business owners to find out where AI opportunities are in their business or in their team, and help them to basically build those solutions. So a lot of our clients or the people that we help, what they found is they don't know whether their organization is ready for it. They don't know where the potential opportunities are and how they can actually get ROI out of it. And that's why we help them to do a review of where those high value opportunities are. And we also help to put together a roadmap, like which one they should do first, where they should do later. What are the low hanging fruits? You can do something that's quick and easy, but it can actually help you to generate a lot of value and give you and your organization the confidence on AI. So we help them to put together an execution plan in that particular strategy consultant. And also at the same time, a lot of the leaders we help, they are not sure how they can, make an AI impact and also align that with their own career progression or with their own leadership journey. So and how they can actually impact their senior leadership to act on those AI opportunities. So in that consultation session, we actually help you to look at what are some of the potential leadership impact you can try to influence, and help you to come together with a method or strategy to do that. And also, I think also Watson has been very generous of giving a lot of templates on how to start your ISO compliance journey. So in our consultation, looking at your business initiatives, we can also help you to give you some of our templates, IPs around how you can put together a business value business case to get your funding, or where some of the like existing AI case studies they can leverage on. So we can provide that as well. So altogether, we do this in that consultation, and we provide it free for you in this for attendees on this call. So you can scan that QR code and book a time with us. So thank you, Wassim.
Thanks, Ron. Thanks a lot. And yep. And now, just to share with you our next two webinars, this is what we are planning to. So as I mentioned, that we will go into the detail of those clauses and the controls. And then at the same time, I have requested from one of our clients to come and join us and then share their journey, how they have implemented and got them certified. And then, of course, some real world challenges and then solutions to implement those systems. And then finally, in the last one, we will go through the certification process. So I have requested a representative from GCC to share with us the process for the certification. We'll go through the internal audit process and then the management review. And then, yes, so that's how we are planning. And And my plan is to cover those two webinars within a month time so that you don't forget. And so that, but at the same time, I did not want, as I mentioned in the beginning, in one webinar, I do not want to cover. So if I may request, because we'll be sending you SOA and the risk and all this, you might as well try to fill your SOA based on your AI system or your AI management system requirement, go through the risk assessment, and then you can come up with some questions as well if you like. Or you can always send, as I said, send through email, contact us, get on a call with us, or we can have a Teams call. So more than happy to get on a Teams call as well. And now, so luckily we have few minutes left, 5 minutes. So I can see one question from Anish. Should the responsible use of AI be integrated into the acceptable use policy? Definitely you can integrate. So all your AI ethical principles and then the responsible use, you can definitely integrate in your current acceptable use policy, as this is what exactly I mentioned. So yes, anyone else has any question, more than happy to, because still we have 5 or 4 minutes. So please type it into the chat. But then as I mentioned, please feel free to reach out to us through email or over the phone. And I mean, we can get on a Teams call. Oh, so
I
there
think there's
is.
a question from HJ for you, Watson.
Yeah, I just saw that. Thanks, Wasim and team, for arranging the webinar series on important topic. I have two questions. What practical governance mechanism could be need to be in place to oversee ethical AI use and ensure confidentiality of company info and accountability across department? Okay, now practical, of course, this is AIMS is definitely providing you the governance structure as well. Now, these are based on your ethical principle as well. Now, New South Wales government, they also have introduced another framework, which is called AIAF, Artificial Intelligence Assessment Framework, and that is based on 5 ethical principles. And then you need to identify those, and then what could be the risk in as part of those. For example, if there is a risk around the privacy, then you need to have those controls around the privacy. And then you might already have a privacy in place as part of your information security. In that case, then you can take a leverage or benefit of that one. So that's how you need to, basically it's the risk based, and based on the risk and the severity of that risk, then you need to properly put the governance around it. Okay, how to measure the success of the maturity of an AIMS beyond mere compliance? See, now that is a good question. Then again, AIMS is a compliance, is not a maturity, does not provide the maturity, but then you can always define maturity like in the NIST. NIST like provide those maturity scales as well. But then similarly, in case of ISO 27001, most of the time that we were getting just for the compliance or the gap assessment or the certification, but not for the maturity. But then definitely you can have scales defined for your maturity of your AIMS. But then in the beginning, like at this stage, yes, we are in the beginning of this journey. Most of the organization, they are just implementing. And what I've seen practically is most of the organization, they wanted to go for the certification, and they are basically just the user, or they are just using LLMs. So yes, there are companies, those are the developers as well. And yes, so that's where it gets a bit more complicated. Any more questions? So I think we have 1 minute left. So thank you all once again. And we're really looking forward to all of you again in our next 2 webinars. And we request you to share this webinar with all your friends, your colleagues, your peers. And I put a question in the Q&A, Ian. Okay, hold on a second. Okay, okay, Mitesh, how does AI certification applicability change since base LLM models are constantly changing? So see, this is now when you apply for the certification, then definitely you have to go with what you have, and then you can always in your surveillance audit. Then of course, if there is any change, then you need to get your certification based on the change. Okay, Asif, we have what are the key data requirements that is essential for developing an AI system? Can you clarify more, like what kind of data requirements? And Ian, great presentation. Thanks. While the driver for 27,000 is clear, why are organizations seeking AIMS certification as opposed to implementing good AI governance controls? It is like ISMS is again, that is again another standard which is putting a governance around information security, but at the same time identifying risk and mitigating. Same thing is with the AIMS. Again, you identifying a risk, you are mitigating a risk, but then you are putting a governance around it so that you are managing and mitigating those risks. So it's a similar thing, Ian, and then that is why there is a natural integration between 27001 and AIMS. And actually, I did implement one where they already were certified with 27001, and then we integrated the two systems. Now, also mean from the data requirements, now that's where you need to ensure that what's your data is, how is that trained, what algorithms are being used, and what's the output, if it is fair or it's not biased, and then on not only at the time of the implementation or the deployment, but on an ongoing basis, you need to ensure there is no drift in the model. I hope I have not missed any question. Yep. I think pretty much covered all. What are the typical evidence or kind of evidence do auditors typically expect for compliance with ISO 42001? And again, it's for each clause and each control is different. What I will do, I will share with you another collateral which you can use for your self-assessment. And in that one, you will get another column where you can have a sample evidence list as well. So yes, I'm more than happy to provide that also, which you can use for your self-assessment. And then if you go for an audit, then you will get like sample evidence that you need to ask if you are going and doing an audit. I think no more questions. So again, thank you all, and hope to see you all again in a couple of weeks' time for the second, and then again in a couple of weeks' time for the third one, so that you can start your journey. Good luck, everyone. Thank you.